Tonight, Ukraine refusing to surrender as Russia resorts to siege warfare on key cities. A Russian missile striking a building in Kyiv, generating a massive fireball. A shopping center there reduced to a smoking pile of rubble. Our Richard Engel is at an underground hospital where babies born to surrogate mothers are sheltering from the endless airstrikes. In the south, Russian troops opening fire and launching stun grenades at a crowd of protesters as Ukraine refuses to hand over a key port city. Plus, the interview tonight with a Ukrainian hacker unable to fight, taking on Russia on a different battlefield. Plus, Admiral Stavridis joins Top Story to discuss the horrific tool of war Russia may be using. Also breaking tonight, deadly airliner crash. Video appearing to show the moment a Boeing 737 falls out of the sky, dropping 20,000 feet in 1 minute. The plane, just 6 years old, one of the most popular models used around the world. 132 people on board, first responders finding no sign of survivors. Here at home, Supreme Test, the historic confirmation hearing underway for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, her powerful opening statement, and how lawmakers are gearing up to question the first black woman nominated to the court. Out of control, dramatic video showing a Tesla going airborne, crashing into two parked cars. Tonight, the owner of that Tesla speaking out. His message for the man who took his car for a dangerous joyride. And a driver in New York City running over a man while doing donuts. The manhunt for both reckless drivers still underway. Fueling crime, high prices at the pump, driving a string of gas heists from coast to coast. What some states are now doing to bring down prices. And spring break emergency. Miami Beach declaring a state of emergency after a violent and chaotic weekend. Will it be enough to control the crowds? Top Story starts right now. And good evening. Fighting for their lives, we begin another week with the war in Ukraine and Russia's increasingly brutal attacks on civilians. Here's some proof. Surveillance footage capturing the moment a massive explosion happened in Kyiv. The video shared by Ukraine's interior minister after Russia targeted a shopping center there. Russian airstrikes leaving that mall a tangled mess of debris. Firefighters still working to put out flames hours after the impact. First responders combing through the rubble. At least 8 people were killed in that blast alone. The scene's even more devastating in Mariupol. Ukraine defying Russian orders to surrender the key southern port at dawn, but more than 90% of that city destroyed already. The residents who stayed coming under constant fire with little access to food or water. In Kherson, Russian troops firing at pro-Ukraine demonstrators, lobbing flash grenades, sending the crowd fleeing. The protesters appeared peaceful before soldiers then opened fire. As Russia continues its attacks from all angles, Ukrainians remain defiant, defending their home. But the toll of the relentless assault grows greater every day. Richard Engel is on the ground in Kyiv again. He leads us off tonight.
With Russia's advance slowed to what U.S. officials describe as a stalemate, its forces are unleashing more punishing bombardments on civilian targets. Rescue workers search for survivors after a deadly strike in Kyiv, this time on a shopping mall. More homes were also hit. Kyiv's mayor says more than 70 buildings have been destroyed. But despite the violence, or more likely because of it, Ukrainians are still turning out to challenge Russian troops. In Russian-occupied Kherson, new images show protesters refusing to back down until Russian troops opened fire, mostly in the air, to disperse the crowds. Kherson is a Russian-speaking city. Russia assumed it would fall easily. The besieged city of Mariupol is getting the worst of the Russian assault. Ukrainian officials today rejected a Russian demand to surrender the city this morning, even after a maternity hospital was hit and civilian shelters at a theater and an art school were bombed. Now, President Zelensky is preparing Ukrainians for even worse, playing an air raid siren, telling them not to be afraid, but to get used to them. Back in Kyiv, they're not waiting for the sirens to get into this bunker. These are foreign babies born to Ukrainian surrogates. Always down here now, trapped in this war zone, are 18 babies. they're well cared for. The bunker is stocked and clean.
The anxiety that the biological parents must be feeling, knowing that their babies are here in a bunker in Kyiv, in a war zone, and they can't get to them, must be just excruciating.
Antonia, a nurse, says we're giving them lots of love and taking care of their needs.
What do you need right now? What would help you, the situation, these children?
We ask for the war to stop, she says. We need help for the nightmare to stop. Antonia told me the nurses protect the babies and that the little angels protect them too.
Tom, Russia this weekend made a claim that got a lot of people's attention. It said that it used hypersonic missiles, the first known use in combat of missiles that can fly multiple times the speed of sound. But tonight, U.S. military officials are saying they can't confirm it. Tom?
All right, Richard Engel reporting for us tonight. So hard to see those images of those babies there. Nearly 1 month into this war, a senior NATO intelligence official now says the conflict is entering a stalemate and, quote, neither side here can win. I want to bring in NBC News Chief International Security and Diplomacy Analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander Admiral James Stavridis. Admiral, thanks for joining Top Story again tonight. I'd like to start where Richard left off there. What exactly are those hypersonic missiles and how deadly are they?
Tom, these are very dangerous weapons. They fly 10 times the speed of sound, and they can fly 1,500 miles, yet they are highly precision guided. Frankly, Putin is not using those to attack Ukraine per se. He's using those to send a signal to the West that I've got these hypersonics, I can put a nuclear weapon on it. He's sending a very dangerous signal of escalation toward NATO and the West.
It seems like the war is getting more and more dark, more and more dangerous. Talk to us about this siege warfare, because some people say this is a change in tactic for the Russians.
Tom, you've been there. You returned recently from this war, and you know exactly what I'm about to say. We are returning to a 15th century style of warfare, which is to say barbaric, inhumane, in today's context, war crimes. That means surrounding these major cities and simply pounding them with artillery, with long-range missiles, with everything that Russians have in the book. And it's wildly inappropriate, dangerous, and in the end, Tom, it's going to lead to attempting to terrorize the Ukrainian population. Bottom line, the Ukrainians are not going to be scared. Look at those photos you're showing now. They will continue to resist these invaders.
No, their courage simply is incredible. I want to show that map we just had up there, Admiral Stavridis. I want you to take a look at it. Some people have talked about, the Russians already have Crimea. They control that part of the east as well, and they've been fighting there for Mariupol. We've been talking about that. That essentially Putin may want to create a land bridge from Crimea into the eastern Ukraine, so at least he can own that and take that back for Russia. Is that what you're seeing as part of the strategy here?
I think that's entirely accurate, Tom. And frankly, Plan A by Putin was to invade, blitzkrieg, decapitate, probably literally Zelensky, run the country, enormously wealthy country full of agrarian products, wheat, corn, every manner of minerals. That was the prize. Now he is falling back in what he ultimately will demand. And you're correct, this land bridge between Crimea, which he has already annexed in his view, and Russia itself, and what sits in the center of it, the city of Mariupol. That's why it's being pounded. Look, Mariupol is like the Alamo. They are under extreme siege. I wish them every hope of resisting it. I'm very proud of what I see there.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what the civilians are living through right there. Admiral Stavridis, we always appreciate you on Top Story. Thank you for joining us tonight. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, Putin's regime's growing more isolated as the war drags on. The possibility of negotiating looking further and further away. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons has more on Putin's next move.
Tonight, hopes fading of a meeting between Russia's President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky. Zelensky had warned, without those talks, Europe faces a descent into World War III. The Kremlin spokesman saying no significant progress has been made in negotiations so far. Diplomacy deteriorating on multiple fronts. Russia's foreign ministry calling in the US ambassador to Russia, threatening to sever ties. Furious after President Biden called President Putin a murderous dictator. The Russian leader has called his critics scum and traitors. Despite all this, Turkey's President Erdogan trying to mediate tonight. After speaking with President Putin last week, his spokesman was on that call.
I see them actually closer today than they were 3 or 4 weeks ago.
He says Turkey's efforts to bring Zelensky and Putin together is the only way to stop the bloodshed.
It sounds like you're suggesting, frankly, a level of trust with President Putin that simply isn't there.
For some leaders, that is true, but that's why, there must be a trust channel. If everybody burns bridges with Russia, who's going to talk to them?
But President Putin, who's still able to sell Russian oil and gas, is facing the possibility of new sanctions as President Biden travels for a NATO summit this week. Tom?
All right, Keir Simmons from London for us. Keir, we thank you for that. In Ukraine, every day civilians are joining the war effort. We've been telling you about this for weeks now. But we're not just talking about fighters on the front lines. NBC's Ali Arouzi introduces us to a man who's using his software engineering skills to attack Russian companies online. Take a look.
Taras says he can't fight the Russians on the front line, but online he's doing all he can to hurt the invading country's war effort.
I cannot be drafted to military directly due to health reasons, but if anything else but that, I do it.
Taras, who asks us to conceal his identity and use a pseudonym for security reasons, says he used to be a software engineer, but the war pulled him in a different direction: cyber hacking.
What was the motivation for you to do this?
I try to do whatever I can reach to end the war, to stop killing Ukrainian people. You can see goals that we would be targeting.
He says his objective is to overload Russian websites by flooding them with traffic, making it impossible for servers of Russian businesses and media outlets to carry on working. To be clear, this type of attack is a crime for individuals in the United States and Russia, but Russia has deployed similar tactics in the past, according to the White House. Taras says that the cyber attacks that he and other digital fighters conduct strike deep blows to the Russian economy, as they've increased in frequency during the war, according to the cybersecurity company Rostelecom Solar.
And how much damage does this do to the Russian operation?
It is dealing a lot of monetary damage to the companies that we are targeting. These are Russian media sites, sites that a lot of Russians are using, banks, railway system sites, military governmental sites.
It's not just the economy he's after, but the Russian state media. That has proved to be a harder target.
Yeah, propaganda machine is hitting hard Russian people, and I think they lost their minds or something.
You're telling them what's happening here, and they're your family members, but they're not listening to you.
Yes, they think that this is fake.
Taras moved to Western Ukraine a few years ago, but says his family, like so many others, have had to run away from their homes in hard-hit areas. His grandparents faced grave dangers living in Kharkiv, but they didn't want to leave. It took a lot of persuasion, but finally he convinced them to join him.
That was a huge relief. I exhaled like I never exhaled before when they came.
Ali Arouzi joins us now live from Lviv tonight. Ali, this is a fascinating look at how some Ukrainians are fighting back. But Taras isn't the only one engaging in this kind of cyber attack. What can you tell us about the so-called IT army?
Hi, Tom. That's right. He's a fascinating guy, very motivated to play a role in this conflict. And of course, he's just one person in this sort of unofficial IT army of 300,000 people that are not only being supported by the Ukrainian officials, but being cheered on and encouraged to fight on the cyber front, because all of this makes a difference for Ukrainians across the board. And you see Ukrainians of all walks of life are trying to do their bit, whether it's moving supplies around, helping the displaced, fighting on the front lines, or hacking Russian systems online. Tom?
Yep, that is so true. The war effort encompassing all Ukrainian civilians. All right, Ali Arouzi for us tonight. They're live in Lviv. Ali, thank you. We want to turn now to the other major international story we're following tonight, that airline disaster in southern China. A Boeing 737 nosediving before crashing into the side of a mountain, apparently killing everyone on board. NBC News aviation correspondent Tom Costello has the latest on that investigation.
On a remote mountain in southern China, the shredded remains of a China Eastern flight with 132 people on board. Rescue teams on scene say it appears no one survived. The Boeing 737-800, just 6 years old, was 90 minutes into its flight from Kunming to the city of Guangzhou. The plane's flight path from Flight Radar 24 tells a horrific story. Cruising at 29,000 feet, it suddenly went into a very steep nosedive, plunging 21,000 feet in just over 1 minute. At 7,400 feet, it briefly climbed, then dove again, terrifying for anyone on board. Chinese dash cam and surveillance video purport to show the plane's fatal plunge.
This is an extremely big mystery. This airplane has no history of doing anything like this.
With 5,000 flying worldwide, the 737-800 has a very good safety record. Importantly, the plane was not a 737 MAX, which is still grounded in China following 2 fatal crashes overseas. The plane's black boxes may provide the best clues into what happened.
It is astonishing how quickly this airplane fell out of the sky in such a short period of time.
All right, Tom joins us now. Tom, I have a couple questions for you. First, what can you tell our viewers about the airline that's mentioned here in the story, and how does it compare with airlines in the U.S.? And then on top of that, this was a Boeing plane, a plane made in the U.S. So how are the U.S. and China working on this investigation?
So China Eastern is the airline. It's the second biggest in China, and it's developed a pretty good reputation. In fact, the entire Chinese aviation system has dramatically upped its safety profile over the last 10 or 20 years since they had a series of crashes in the 1990s. And China Eastern has done pretty well. Now, part of that is because they fly so many Boeing aircraft, modern Boeing aircraft. But the fact that this plane, only 6 years old, as you mentioned, American-made Boeing 737-800, the fact that it is involved in this crash sends a lot of people into very concerning places. They want to get their answers as fast as they can from the NTSB, from Chinese investigators, to find out why this plane went down and whether there may be a problem that needs to be addressed worldwide. This is widely flown, 800 planes here in the United States alone. You and I fly on them almost every day that we fly. So this is something that they need to get to the bottom of pretty quickly.
Tom Costello with that breaking news and just horrific video. Tom, thank you. Back here at home, history in Washington as Senate confirmation hearings began for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court. The judge introducing herself and preparing for some tough questioning ahead. Peter Alexander has those details.
Tonight, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson making the case on her own behalf, the start of a historic confirmation hearing to become the first black woman on the nation's highest court.
I hope that you will see how much I love our country and the Constitution and the rights that make us free.
With her husband wiping away a tear and her daughters seated nearby, Jackson also thanked her parents, both former school teachers, there with her today.
They gave me an African name, Ketanji Onyeka, which they were told means lovely one. Unlike the many barriers that they had had to face growing up, my path was clearer, so that if I worked hard and I believed in myself in America, I could do anything or be anything I wanted to be.
The 51-year-old who was confirmed less than a year ago as a federal appeals court judge is likely to face tougher scrutiny now, including from Lindsey Graham, one of 3 Republicans who voted to confirm her then.
I want to know about your judicial philosophy, because people on the left, the far extreme part of the left, believe that you were the best bet. And I want to know why they reached that conclusion.
And Republican Josh Hawley previewing a line of attack, accusing Jackson of being soft on crime, highlighting her sentencing decisions in child pornography cases.
In every case, in each of these 7, Judge Jackson handed down a lenient sentence that was below what the federal guidelines recommended, and below what prosecutors requested.
But Democrats highlighting that Jackson's nomination has been endorsed by numerous law enforcement officials and the Fraternal Order of Police.
She hails from a law enforcement family. And no, she's not soft on crime.
And hailing her groundbreaking selection.
This is not a normal day for America. We have never had this moment before.
If confirmed, Jackson pledging to be independent and neutral.
Thank you for this historic chance to join the highest court, to work with brilliant colleagues, to inspire future generations, and to ensure liberty and justice for all.
All right, Peter Alexander joins us now from the White House. Peter, is there any sense of how ugly this confirmation process may get? And I ask just because there was so much bad blood after the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing between both parties.
Yeah, that's right. Senate Republicans spent a lot of today, Tom, attacking Democrats' handling of Justice Brett Kavanaugh's nomination back in 2018. They promised that Judge Jackson's hearings will be, in their words, respectful. Lindsey Graham among them saying this will not be a circus. Still, it could get contentious, but importantly, remember that these hearings are very likely to end in Judge Jackson's confirmation, because if Senate Democrats stay united, they can confirm her without a single Republican vote, Tom.
Peter Alexander for us at the White House tonight. Peter, thank you. For more on the confirmation hearing and the latest headlines from the Supreme Court, I want to bring in NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, so the first question, if confirmed, Ketanji Brown Jackson wouldn't change the ideological lineup on the Supreme Court. So are Republicans likely to be less aggressive in their questioning with her?
I think so, yes. And of course, part of the problem for the Republicans is that she just went through this 8 months ago when she was confirmed to the Court of Appeals here. Now, of course, Supreme Court confirmation hearings are different. Appeals court judges follow precedent. Supreme Court justices decide the cases that set precedent. But her record hasn't changed. And most of the questions from the Republicans will probably be about her record as a trial court judge and her experience as an assistant public defender, something she just went through. So, for example, the Republicans are likely to ask her about her work defending the detainees at Guantanamo Bay when she was a public defender. She was asked about that at her appeals court hearing, and she said at the time that her brother was serving in the Army in Iraq and that the legal brief she submitted in that detainee case did not necessarily represent her personal views about the war on terror. She introduced that brother today, and we'll probably hear about him again, Tom.
Yeah, that family history in both law enforcement and the military. I do want to talk about another headline. What can you tell us about Justice Clarence Thomas, who we found out over the weekend is in the hospital?
Right. It's not COVID, the court says, but it is enough of an infection to land him in a hospital bed. The court says he was admitted to a Washington, D.C. hospital on Friday, that he was suffering from what were described as flu-like symptoms. Doctors determined that it was an infection. The court isn't being more specific than that. They won't tell us what kind of an infection, but they say he is being treated with intravenous antibiotics. And today the court says he is getting better, that he expects to be released from the hospital in a day or two. And then he'll catch up on this week's argued cases by reading the transcripts. Justice Thomas is 73. He's the court's longest-serving member. He's now in his 31st year on the bench. And so far, he shows no signs of slowing down, Tom.
All right, Pete Williams for us tonight. Pete, thank you. Tonight, we're also tracking severe weather in the South. In Texas, a set of wildfires exploding in size outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You see it right there. More than 54,000 acres burned and hundreds of residents evacuated. 22 million people from Oklahoma to Louisiana now under alert for heavy rain, dangerous winds, large hail, and even possibly tornadoes. I want to bring in now Al Roker with a look at what's expected over the next few hours. And Al, it looks like it's getting dangerous down south.
Yeah, it really is, Tom. In fact, we've had reports of tornadoes on the ground already in Texas with damage and some big problems. We've got tornado watches in effect for much of central Texas. Severe thunderstorm watches as well. We've got right now 22 million people at risk, damaging hail, strong tornadoes possible, wind gusts of up to 70 miles per hour. This area from Dallas to Lufkin down to Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Waco, a strong chance for tornadoes. Then hail is a big problem as well, from Wichita Falls down to Victoria, out to Lufkin, San Antonio as well. Tomorrow that moves to the east into the lower Gulf Coast. 10 million people at risk, damaging winds. Again, tornadoes tornadoes possible, and this area in red showing more of that activity. It's going to look like from Jackson, Alexandria, down to New Orleans, out to Mobile, the possibility of strong storms and tornadoes. And then Wednesday, it's in the southeastern Atlantic for 25 million people. Can't rule out a tornado or two. Here's what we're looking at. This system is going to explode, deepen as it moves into eastern Texas and Louisiana tonight. Torrential downpours, areas of flooding. Tuesday, destructive storms from the Gulf Coast all the way into the Ohio River Valley. Tornadoes may continue into the overnight. And then Wednesday, showers, heavy rain for parts of the mid-Atlantic. Severe storms will be rumbling across the southeast. We've got flood watches right now for 16 million people from Memphis out to Houston and over to Birmingham, because we could be looking at up to 6 inches of rain or more in this lower Mississippi River Valley. And Tom, we are really worried about the nighttime tornadoes. Why? Well, because nighttime tornadoes are twice as deadly as their daytime counterparts. The reasons? Well, of course, a lot of folks are asleep, unaware of the warnings. They're difficult to see in the darkness, even if you are up. So ways to wake you up with a warning: iPhone, iPad, you go to settings, notifications, government alerts, Android, advanced settings, emergency alerts, or you can download the Red Cross app at your app store, and that will alert your phone when there are warnings. Tom?
All right, Al Roker with that severe weather and some great tips right there. Al, thank you. Next tonight, to the state of emergency in Miami Beach, the city taking drastic action following a weekend of violence as crowds of spring breakers take over the area. NBC South Florida's Jamie Garola is there.
This is world-famous Ocean Drive on Monday Beach overnight Monday. A crowd of people in panic, fleeing for cover when gunshots rang out. Police rush down the street and paramedics help a woman caught in the crossfire.
I had to get out the way. I gotta go home to my mother. Like, nah.
This visitor didn't take cover. He pulled out his gun to protect himself, but he ended up not using it. He was detained and released by police.
I hear gunshots. I see smoke coming off the bricks. I see a guy with a gun running. So I pull out my gun. I'm thinking he finna shoot me. So when I see that he ain't finna shoot me, I let him go.
2 women shot. Police arrested one shooter. They're looking for another. The night before, another shooting. 3 victims rushed to the hospital. Mayor Dan Gelber says he was on Ocean Drive hours before it happened.
You could feel that at any moment something could happen. And that's just not a way a city can operate.
Yeah, spring break, vacation.
The chief of police says volume of spring breakers is up. 67% of colleges off during a 2-week period. Now the mayor and other commissioners will vote on declaring a public emergency to control the crowd.
We can't endure this anymore. We just simply can't. This isn't your father's or mother's spring break. This is something wholly different. And I've said this before. A lot of us have said this before. We don't ask for spring break. We don't promote it. We don't encourage it. We just endure it. And frankly, it's not something we want to endure. We don't want spring break.
Declare a public emergency?
The city manager proposing a curfew beginning Wednesday night, Thursday morning. At 12:01, visitors in South Beach and parts of Mid Beach will be forced to go back to their hotels.
And every year we put more police, we bring more assets to create as safe an environment as we can have. At the end of the day, when tens of thousands of people are crowding into what is essentially a small area on South Beach, really just South Beach, it is what it is, and we have to respond.
All right, NBC South Florida's Jamie Garola joins us now live. So, Jamie, I'm from Miami. I worked in local news here just like you are at the same station you're at right now. And I kind of saw spring breaks getting more and more dangerous over the years. But when you talk about a state of emergency, you're usually thinking about a hurricane down in South Florida. And also, I got to think these bars and restaurants, it's going to kill their business, this curfew starting at midnight.
Yeah, you know, the last time Miami Beach had a curfew was during COVID, and the reason why is because they say 9 officers were injured in the last 2 weeks, not to mention more than 80 guns seized in the last 3 days, and at least 5 people taken to the hospital after being shot this past weekend. So a lot of concern is, as you mentioned, as far as those restaurants are concerned, a lot of their money for these bars on Ocean Drive comes after midnight, when a lot of people have already finished having dinner and are ready to go out and party.
All right, this state of emergency, pretty incredible happening down there in Miami Beach. All right, Jamie, thank you so much for that report. Still ahead tonight, the soaring gas prices fueling crime. Thieves targeting stations from coast to coast, literally stealing gas, making off with thousands of dollars worth of fuel. What states are now doing to bring prices down. Plus, the prisoners rushed to the hospital after collapsing at a juvenile detention center. What authorities discovered in the vents of that facility. And out of control, a Tesla going airborne in LA, and a driver doing donuts in New York, hitting a man. Why the cameras filming may have added to the bad behavior. Top story. Just getting started on this Monday night. We're back now on Top Story. Gas hikes intensifying with sky-high prices at the pump. The cost of gas coming down slightly, but still far above where it was last month. And experts say those high prices might be fueling the surge in fuel theft. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch reports tonight from L.A., where we're seeing some of the highest gas prices in the country.
Tonight, as high gas prices continue to sting nationwide, some people apparently aren't paying a cent at the pump.
One of the gentlemen has a dispenser key, because every time they will come in, they will open the dispenser and they will steal diesel from there.
One Dallas area gas station says thieves appearing to be captured on camera here have stolen over $23,000 of diesel in recent months. A North Carolina pump says it was also hit.
Like remote control. They bypass the pump. Once they bypass it, they don't know how to do nothing. Lift the nozzle up, choose the grid, they can start filling.
AAA says the heists are part of a growing trend across the country, with thieves even drilling into cars with newer gas tanks, which you can't siphon from as easily.
The reason for that likely is just because gas prices are so expensive.
Over the past week, AAA says the national average price of gas has dipped slightly, but the average price of regular is still up more than 70 cents a gallon from just a month ago. And in states like California, it's still climbing.
Half a tank, $76.
How does that feel?
Nuts.
AAA says right now the average gas prices in California are the most expensive in the country. Here in Los Angeles, it can cost you even more to fill up the tank. Plus, we could see those prices go up again in the days ahead. Outside San Francisco, more than 500 workers are striking at a Chevron refinery. Chevron says it's prepared to keep up normal operations, but AAA says a shutdown could strangle California's gas supply.
We're just out here trying to, lessen the burden on our workers' families. It's the same plight of all blue-collar workers.
The eye-popping gas prices are sending more people into the electric vehicle market. Edmund says searches for hybrid and electric cars are up 84% since last month.
I'm in love with it, especially now as I drive past gas stations.
Some states are trying to help by pumping the brakes on their gas taxes. Maryland and Georgia's governors have already signed suspensions into law.
We are doing our part to lessen the impact on your wallet.
All right, Jesse Kirsch joins us now live from Los Angeles. On that last point there in your story, Jesse, we're seeing several states around the country considering gas tax holidays. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Tom, the National Conference of State Legislators says about 17 states right now are considering either lowering or freezing their gas taxes. Congress also has an effort going, but that's stalled right now. There's a question, though, of if this will actually wind up benefiting people. Some experts wonder if producers will pass on the benefits from a reduction in the taxes to the consumer. There's also a question of what happens when you take away that tax revenue, because there are infrastructure and road safety programs that some experts worry will not have as much funding if you lower those taxes. There's one other point I want to remind people of, Tom. Remember, we're talking about average gas prices. Here in California, AAA says that's about $5.85 right now. But you can see here in L.A., it's closer to $6.60, and if you use the credit card, it costs you even more. And where I am right now, just a couple blocks away, I saw earlier, even closer to $7. So just a reminder for people at home, if your eyes are popping out when you see the average gas prices we're talking about, when you actually get to the pump, it could cost you even more. Tom?
Yeah, Jesse, I was looking at that board. I thought it said $5.99 when you said $6.99. I couldn't believe it. All right, I hope you ride a bicycle over there. Jesse, thanks so much for that. Now to the investigations into 2 car crashes caught on camera. The daredevil stunts pulled in New York and Los Angeles, one involving a Tesla taking flight before crashing into another car. And the driver, you see him here doing donuts, hit a man that was trying to videotape him. Juan Venegas has much more.
This flying Tesla is going viral, and the police in Los Angeles are now offering a reward to catch the driver. The stunt filmed by a group of people, including an influencer, witnessing the moment it crash landed and slammed into a parked SUV.
This guy clearly pressed on the gas a little too hard and got a little too much air, out of control, you know.
The driver and passengers fleeing the scene in another car before neighbors came outside.
Everyone is fine.
The wrecked Tesla left at the scene. The owner of the car it slammed telling us the damage is extensive.
I just put about $4,500 in my car last month to get a new motor in it, and I was like, oh man, I don't have enough money to like fix it.
Police officers telling him the Tesla could have been rented as he filed his report. The incident now triggering harsh criticism against reckless drivers pulling stunts to show off on camera. Over the weekend, this car doing donuts in New York City was filmed running over a man who appeared to fall in front of it. The car fleeing the scene immediately, with police now on the hunt for the driver. The victim taken to a hospital in critical condition.
You need to check out this scene right in the heart of Center City.
The incident is one of several careless displays behind the wheel going viral. In January, a driver in San Diego was arrested after using the field at Petco Park to do the same. Other incidents like this one in Northern California and this one in downtown Philadelphia have become a trend on social media, many ignoring the risks for those standing around. But the latest stunt display in New York City reminding them of the danger for those involved.
All right, Guad joins us now live from New York. Guad, I got to ask you about that man that was run over by the car doing donuts. Do we know how he's doing?
Tom, well, the latest report from NYPD says he is in serious but stable condition. And let me add that the man in Los Angeles whose car was wrecked is getting a ton of support from the community. He's gotten money donations on GoFundMe. As of now, he's almost at $10,000. So it looks like he'll be able to buy a new car at the end of this ordeal. Tom?
All right, Guad Venegas for us tonight. Guad, we thank you for that. When we come back, the deadly crash in Philadelphia, 2 police officers and a pedestrian killed on I-95. Why state troopers were stopped on the side of that busy highway before they were struck. Stay with us. All right, we are back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with a deadly crash on a Philadelphia highway. 2 state troopers and a pedestrian were killed on I-95 early this morning. Police say the officers were trying to get to a man who was walking on the highway into a patrol car when a driver attempted to get around the scene and struck all 3 people. Police say the driver may have been under the influence at the time. So far, no charges have been filed. All right, several people hospitalized after fentanyl was found in air vents at a juvenile detention center in Ohio. Authorities say the drugs were discovered after some of the young inmates started collapsing. 4 inmates and 3 wardens taken to the hospital. Everyone is expected to be okay. The other juveniles will be transferred to an adult prison as the investigation at that center continues. And dredging efforts underway tonight to free a cargo ship stuck in the Chesapeake Bay. The Ever Forward ran aground on the coast of Maryland 8 days ago. You can see the size of that ship right there. Officials will say it could take up to another week to get the ship moving again. Right now, there is no threat of pollution. That's good news. And a consumer alert, we want to tell you about some popular lotions recalled over concerns they contain a harmful bacteria. Cow Incorporated recalling 3 and 10-ounce bottles of Jergens Ultra Healing Moisturizer made in October of 2021. The company says the products could be dangerous to those with weakened immune systems or other health issues. All right, you can get some information, of course, as always, on our website. We want to turn back now to our coverage on the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say Russia is taking even more drastic steps in Mariupol, even accusing them of deporting desperate residents and sending them to detention camps. Gabe Gutierrez is in Ukraine.
It is a massacre of historic proportions, witnesses say. The bloody siege on Mariupol is putting Russia's brutal tactics on full display, choking off supplies to civilians, and leaving Olga, who asked us not to use her last name, choking back tears. She barely escaped Mariupol, dodging shelling and landmines. We were like blind cats, she says. We just took a gamble and left. Also out of Mariupol tonight, the two Associated Press journalists who documented the first horrors of the Russian invasion, including the bombing of a maternity ward. The doctors pleaded with us to film families bringing in their own dead and wounded. No one knows what's going on in our city, they said. In a new harrowing account, they described their escape. The Russians were hunting us. They had a list of names, including ours, and they were closing in. But Ukrainian soldiers were under orders to find and extract them first. If the Russians catch you, one of the soldiers said, they will get you on camera and make you say that everything you filmed is a lie. All your efforts and everything you have done in Mariupol will be in vain. We also spoke today with Ukraine's deputy prime minister, who says Russian troops are rounding up residents and sending them to so-called filtration camps before they're deported to Russian-controlled territories.
People are searched. They check telephones, documents, and personal belongings. They want to know whether this person is pro-Ukrainian. These people disappear.
NBC News can't independently verify that. Russian state television claims evacuees are arriving in Russia willingly.
That is an absolute lie.
Analysts say Russia has used such tactics before during its wars in Chechnya. Olga told us she's now heard of people who've gone to the camps. We asked her why, and she responded with a question. If you thought your child would not survive the next half hour, is there any place you would not go?
All right, Gabe joins us now from Lviv tonight. And Gabe, we just heard there from Olga. How is she doing tonight? And has she been in contact at all with her family?
Well, Tom, she is devastated. She has not been able to hear from her parents for several days. It's obviously very difficult to get any phone calls out of that city. But just after our interview, she told us that she did hear from a good friend of hers. But unfortunately, that friend was crying on the phone during the brief phone call because her 15-year-old son had just died, Tom.
A teenager. I mean, these stories are just getting so horrific. I do also want to ask you about that shocking accusation from Ukraine's deputy prime minister in your interview that Russia is rounding people up and putting them into camps. It makes us think of World War II. Did she give any estimates or more details of how prevalent this is?
Well, over the weekend, Tom, the Mariupol City Council first came out with that allegation and at the time said that Russian troops were rounding up thousands of residents and putting them into these so-called filtration camps and then deporting at least some of them into Russian-controlled territories. The deputy prime minister reiterated that during our interview. She said it was outrageous. She called it a war crime and said that, it could be an escalation of this war. Another expert told me this could be a part of the technique that the Russians are using in terms of psychological warfare to really keep these cities under Russian control, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez for us tonight from Lviv. Gabe, thank you. Staying with the war in Ukraine, a key part of Russia's strategy revolves around information warfare. We've been telling you about this throughout the broadcast. But an anti-war protest by a Russian television producer seen live on Russian state TV shows a crack in the Kremlin's pro-war propaganda. Cal Perry is in Ukraine with the latest on that story.
It's the anti-war protests seen across Russia and now the world. Marina Ovsyannikova, a Ukrainian-born employee of the Russian state-controlled network Channel 1, interrupting a live newscast with a sign telling viewers, quote, "Don't believe the propaganda." In just 1 week, it's become a moment that symbolizes Russian opposition to the war. In an interview with ABC's This Week, Mariana says she's not backing down.
The Russian people are really against the war. It's Putin's war, not Russian people's war.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov responding, describing Ovsyanikova's protest as, quote, hooliganism. On March 15th, Ovsyannikova was fined 30,000 rubles, or about $280 for conducting an unauthorized protest. Speaking outside of court, she told reporters she'd been detained by authorities for more than 14 hours.
It was my own anti-war decision. I made this decision by myself.
Ovsyannikova could soon face further charges in Russia relating to her protest. The state-owned TASS news agency reported that Ovsyannikova could face prosecution under a new Russian law for spreading what the Kremlin sees as, quote, fake news. Charges that threaten 15 years of prison time. On Friday, Ovsyannikova submitted her resignation from Channel 1 after more than 20 years with the network. Channel 1's News Division boss, Kirill Klamyanov, addressed the protest and the Western media's reaction on air this weekend, saying Ovsyannikova, quote, betrayed their country in a cold, calculated manner. Ovsyannikova says she'll stay in Russia, turning down an offer for asylum from France's President Emmanuel Macron.
I have publicly refused to take political asylum in France because I am a patriot. I want to live in Russia. My children want to live in Russia. It's not just black and white in Russia. And I wanted to show to our Russian people that they need to think critically and analyze the information that is being presented to them critically.
A lot of guts right there. Cal Perry joins us now live from Lviv in Ukraine. So, Cal, we know what Vladimir Putin does to his enemies. He poisons them sometimes. He locks them up forever. I'm actually surprised she even got out of jail. Do we know why she decided to take to the airwaves? I mean, because that was an incredibly, incredibly brave move.
Yeah, you know, in her interviews, she has said that she thought about going down onto the street and protesting in that square in downtown Moscow. And our viewers will know people are so quickly ushered off as they try to even open their mouths. So she made the decision to do it in prime time, 9 p.m. on Channel 1. It's one of the most watched programs on one of the highest rated channels. She wanted it to be seen not only in Russia, but around the world. What she really wanted, Tom, is people like me and you to be having this conversation about it so that it was seen by the most amount of people around the world.
Yeah, and it's incredible she's staying put in Russia. She's not going to seek asylum somewhere. All right, Cal Perry, who's been doing some incredible reporting week in and week out in Ukraine. Cal, we thank you for that. Please stay safe. We now turn to our top story, Global Watch, in the car, driving through a carnival crowd in Belgium. Police say a driver slammed his car into a group of performers at high speed. At least 6 people were killed, another 10 injured. 2 people inside the car are now in custody. Right now, investigators say they do not believe it was terror-related, but are investigating what exactly happened there. U.S. officials have identified 4 Marines killed in a helicopter crash in Norway. The 4 men inside an Osprey helicopter that went down during a training flight over the weekend. Here are their photos. This happened over the weekend. Their remains are in the process of being brought back to the U.S. The cause of the crash, though, is still under investigation. All right, still ahead on Top Story right now, the royal tour of the Caribbean off to a shaky start. William and Kate met with protesters in Belize, how they're now changing the rest of their itinerary, and why the future of the Commonwealth could be at stake. Stay with us. All right, back now with the Americas. William and Kate in Jamaica. As part of a week-long tour, it's their first joint overseas trip since the start of the pandemic, but it's off to a rocky start. Kathy Park has more.
Tonight, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge in the Caribbean, and already making a splash as they kick off their royal tour.
This is our land. This is our property.
Even before the couple landed in Belize, some residents staged a protest, reportedly for William's ties to a conservation group that's in a land dispute with the village.
Our land is for we, and we need land for our children.
The pushback forced the royals to revise plans and visit a different area. But despite the detour, they did receive a warm welcome moments after touching down, complete with a 21-gun salute. And even impressed the locals with their dance moves. After Belize, the pair will head to Jamaica and the Bahamas on behalf of the Queen, the head of the state in those Commonwealth countries. 54 member countries make up the Commonwealth, and 15 of them have the Queen as its monarch. The trip comes at a pivotal time for the future of the monarchy in the Caribbean. The future king and queen touring some countries that are increasingly leaning toward breaking with the crown. A key part of their mission, a charm offensive to persuade the countries not to leave the Commonwealth. In a historic move, Barbados lost the Queen as its official head of state last year, becoming a republic, meaning an independent country that doesn't pledge allegiance to the Queen, though it's still part of the Commonwealth of Nations.
I shall always consider myself a friend of Barbados.
Now, Jamaica's prime minister has signaled becoming a republic too.
There is no question that Jamaica has to become a republic. There's no question.
The palace have always been very clear that a decision to become a republic is very much down to the people of each country.
As William and Kate stand in for the Queen during her Platinum Jubilee year, they'll be championing causes close to them like the environment, mental health, and early childhood development, continuing their roles as ambassadors of the royal family to the rest of the world.
After Belize, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge will head to Jamaica, where they will meet with military members there and also pay tribute to the great Bob Marley. William and Kate will wrap up their royal tour in the Bahamas, where they're set to compete in a sailing regatta in honor of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Tom?
All right, thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas. Stay right there. More news now on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.